Omar Ahmed Bahlawa was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He obtained his high school diploma on 1977 from Riyadh Secondary School. He enrolled into King Saud University, majoring in electrical engineering. He obtained his bachelor's in 1982. He worked in many different firms during the past 20 years, beginning with the Saudi Industrial Development Fund, starting out as an assistant technical analyst and quickly climbing the ranks to become a senior technical analyst. After that, he moved on to manage several different factories, like sack factories and carpet factories, where some of his duties were to prepare and follow up the financial position, cash flow, and budget of the company, and submit the same to the board, and establishing and executing the marketing and sales plan for the company, both locally and internationally. Mr. Omar Bahlawa, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Walid.
It's a pleasure having you.
Same here.
And thank you for letting us shoot this episode in your home. You have a very great home, inshallah.
Thank you. This is your home. My home is yours.
Mr. Omar, first of all, we'd like to, can you talk to us about your school days, elementary school in particular?
Well, you're bringing me to the early days of my life. I grew up and I born and grew up in Riyadh. Riyadh was a small city in those days. It was the population of about 150.
You don't look that old. What do you mean by those days?
Well, I'm mid-age. I went to school in elementary school at a school called Al-Tidhkariya School. Mm-hmm. This school was established as a celebration for the receiving of late King Abdulaziz when he came back from his medical treatment in the early 50s or late 50s maybe. Mm-hmm. When he came over, the people of Riyadh in those days wanted to give him a present. But he said, don't do that to me. Instead, build up a school. So they've collected that money that they wanted to buy a present, mm-hmm. and they built up that school, and they called it At-Tidhkariya. At-Tidhkariya means something to memorize the event with. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the pioneer schools in those days, and it's one of the early schools in Riyadh.
Was it a governmental school or?
Yeah, it was a government school. In those days, there was no private schools. You're talking about 40 or 35 years ago. Mm-hmm. There was nothing called private schools. Government was providing all infrastructure for the country. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the unique presentation from the, of course, the people of Riyadh, but ultimately the government took over. Yeah. They've participated with part of the money as well, and they took over in terms of running and managing the school.
Did it differ in any way in like curriculum-wise from any other school?
It is the same, the government curriculum in those days.
And in your point of view, what's the difference between the education back then and now?
Well, I tell you what, education in those days was basics, but in the same time, it wasn't very much different than today, but it has been developed, I see, today. In those days, it was, in terms of culture education, it was almost the same, Arabic and religion and geographic and history. But in my own opinion, in those days, the mathematics and arithmetics was much easier than today. They've complicated things with new mathematics methodology, etc. Yeah. I'm not pro the new maths. I'm pro the old system and the old regime in education.
Well, and back then, the curriculum was different from today. I mean, they had music lessons. Am I right, or?
No, there wasn't any, but there was more of sport.
There were more activities. What I meant was more activities. They had theater, I think.
We had theaters. We had artworks that we had to do, and it was part of our standard education, and it gave us lots of skills. There was or few events during the year for the theater. So we go what's so called the annual party for the school itself.
Yeah.
And we participate on daily presentation to the other students. Like on daily basis, one of those students can come up on the theater and give either a song or a poet or a speech. And there was what's so called the local radio station of
For the school. Yeah.
So during the breaks, there was like a committee within the school.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see it nowadays.
I didn't
It's so
have it.
beautiful. You build up skills in some of the students. There was a police within the school. There was what's so called health police within the school to keep the health of the school and make sure that every student gets healthy and become
They were all
clean.
students.
They're all students, yeah, volunteers. And it's like a small committee within the school. It was so beautiful.
Why do you think that these activities deteriorated these days?
Development. They wanted to develop certain sectors and they forgot about
Neglected
basic
the
sector
others,
and
yeah.
neglected that. I urge every person in charge to bring back these activities in schools. Also sports, not to forget sports. After school we have games like the football, the volleyball, the basketball, other activities, and it was super. Most of the sportsmen in those days came up from schools, not from the from the outside, what's so called neighborhood players. It was from schools. So the schools was the basic or the first seat for all players in those days.
I mean, they have teams in schools right now,
and
but
it was tough competition.
it gives them the need for. It gives them. It seeds in them the need for competition. They seek more ambition.
Oh yes, and
we
it was
have
school
teams
to school.
today.
So you build up a team and you build up the crowd. Cheering for your team. Then you have a competition with other schools. The schools build up the skills within its students, and they build up the stamina. They build up the ability and the skills. It is beautiful.
Well, okay, going back to your school days. Which activities did you have an interest in mostly?
As most of Saudis, soccer or football.
Soccer.
And we call it in the third world football.
Football, yeah. And did you join in any? Were you in the school team?
Oh yeah, in secondary school I was in the school team, and of course in university I was with the first team
the college.
of the.
Well, how about in regards to the subjects? What were you interested in mostly?
I was Arabic I was very strong in Arabic. But then science, all the science subjects like mathematics. Algebra and others, I was very good at it.
I mean, today school. I just finished high school recently, just 3 years ago, and I mean chemistry, biology. We don't have labs. Was that different back then? Did you have?
No, nowadays there was labs, and we have 1 or 2 sessions per week to go to the lab, and we practice. I remember we used to go and we get degrees on that, and it was very important to pass the exam, to pass the lab exam. However, I still believe that labs have been neglected. This is one. There was what's so-called library visit. You visit the library and you read. You pick up a book and you read, and you come and summarize that book to your teacher. Unfortunately, in those days, they did not teach us how to stand up and talk in public. And this is unfortunately this is part of the drawback of our education, to be a public speaker.
Yeah.
Also in those days we had what's so called the beauty of social gathering. You have 1 or 2 trips outside the school.
Yeah, the field trips.
Field trips.
Yeah.
Or a trip to outside to the desert. You spend 1 full day, like a Thursday in those days. Yes. You spend 1 full Thursday, whole school with the manager and teachers. This is something I don't think that it is existing anymore.
No, I didn't see it.
I really am looking for our educational ministry to bring this back to our school days.
Hopefully,
Because this is
hopefully.
part of the beauty that we had in those days.
And were there any teachers that inspired you in any way back in high school?
Yes, of course, as every student, I had one or two teachers who inspired me, especially the one in Arabic, because he really gave me the chance to read, and he was lending me books to read, and he encouraged me to read. And I was, in the beginning, like I borrowed a couple of books just to show off.
Yeah.
Then I got so attached to reading, so I've started to buy my own book and read it. Also, in those days, there was what's so-called auction of books or a garage sale for books. You go to the Batha, which is the downtown of Riyadh. You find people having books on the floor, and you buy it for 1 riyal in those days.
Yeah.
You enjoy the book. Next week, you go and buy it, and you do the saving for one riyal in those days.
Yeah, it
money.
was something. Yeah.
Yeah, so you save that 1 riyal and to buy that book. And you
Which kind of books did you like the most? I mean, do you like novels or biographies?
It was a mix of everything. In those days, historic books, novels, some of the Western books, like what we call international the stories.
Yeah, translated, of course,
Yeah,
into Arabic.
translated, yeah, into Arabic. I wasn't speaking English at that time. And also we had books from Egypt and Lebanon in those days. Most of the authors like Najib Mahfoud, Ihsan Abdul Quddus, and some other authors international like Charles Danks, etc. So it was something. Victor Hugo of France, The Misery was translated in Arabic, and it was. I remember I cried by the end of the story.
And you said that in sports-wise you liked soccer.
Yeah.
And what about tennis? When did you pick up tennis?
No, I picked up tennis later on. When I went to the States, we started, in the States they don't play soccer mostly.
Yeah.
So I have to find another sport. So we were a group of 5 people, and we are a small group. So we started practicing tennis. Then I fell
Do you
in
play
love.
it today?
No, not today. I had a shoulder injury, so I stopped it. But I used to play it. I played tennis for maybe 7-8 years. Then I stopped it.
I tried playing tennis once. I couldn't. I mean, too tiring. You had to run around too much.
Yeah, it's a very good game. You need the high stamina for that game, and you need a fast move. I remember I used to play with my boss, and he was twice my age, and sometimes he beats me.
When did you go to college, Mr. Omar? Or where did you go to college? I'm sorry.
Most of my education was in Saudi Arabia. Mostly was in Riyadh. I'm a homegrown boy, as they say. I grew up and I went to school in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So I went to engineering college in King Saud University. In those days, it wasn't this big university premises that they have today. It was scattered around Riyadh. You'll find the engineering college in one sector in Riyadh. It was in Oasis in those days.
So it wasn't a compound. It wasn't a compound.
No, it wasn't a one full complex.
One facility. It was.
No, it wasn't one facility. It was scattered. There was the main university.
Like rented houses, probably. Rented buildings.
They rented houses. They rented buildings. They rented schools. They built part of it, so it was so scattered. Even the residential part of it was scattered on. Really, we went through a lot in Saudi Arabia. If you follow up the education and the history of education in Saudi Arabia, in a short time we've jumped from ground zero to sky.
Of course. What did you major in?
My major engineering was electrical engineering, and my thesis was in solar cells or photovoltaic converters. And this is it was on the if you know that Saudi Arabia is famous for sun. It's a shiny country. So we wanted in those days to see the efficiency of the photovoltaic converters to convert the sun beams into electricity.
Yeah.
So my thesis was in that field. So I had to go all the way to Al Uyayna, which is about 50 kilometers out of Riyadh in those days.
To experiment there.
To do the experiment. There are 2 villages there, or 2 cities run by solar cells. Al-Jubaila and Al-Ayena. And still is. It is run by the King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology.
So there are solar plants
Yes.
in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And can you estimate how much power is distributed?
It's not much. It's a small one.
It's consumed by the village.
That's
actually.
right. Yeah, it's maybe 500 to 1,000 kVA max.
Well, I'm going to ask you, like, it's not a really relevant question, but do you think that people would benefit if they used these solar cells?
Solar cells...
Are they expensive or inexpensive?
They are expensive. The solar cells today are not geared for big consumption. It is geared for remote areas. If you have an area where you don't have power and you need electricity in a way or another, then you use solar cells, and it is used mostly for low consumption or low demand voltage or kVA. If you need a high kVA, then you have to have, of course, power generation, which is completely different. Plus, the efficiency out of the solar cells is not much, or is not high. So you need really to have a wider space to have, because it takes space.
So it doesn't work on rooftops of houses, not much.
It will, but with our summer, I doubt it, because our air conditioning system
consumes too much power.
Consumes lots of power. That's correct.
Well, you said that you studied college here in Saudi Arabia. Why didn't you go abroad? Even though, I mean, back then the chances to go abroad were limitless. You were.
That's a very good question, Walid. First, the education system here, still very good, especially in university. In those days, there was majorly 5-6 scientific universities like King Saud University, and in those days its name was Riyadh University.
Yeah.
Then King Khalid converted that to its original name, which is King Saud University. And there was King Fahad University, which was called Petroleum University in those days, and it was a college as well. Why I picked up? I've been advised, I graduated in 1977, and when I graduated, I had two chances: either to go abroad for education or to do my education locally. I was lucky to get my education locally. First, I finished my education on time. Engineering is 5 years, so I've done it in 5 years.
If you were to go abroad, it would have taken longer?
You'll lose 1 year because you'll take...
The language.
The language 1 year, then God knows if you'll pass or not.
Yeah.
So I passed that. Then I had the chance to go overseas when I was on top of my job. And that was an advantage, as a job training instead. So I got that as an advantage, is to get things like GUSI and your salary is running, and you're not a student, you're a worker.
And right after you finished college, right after you got your degree, where did you go to work?
I graduated in 1983. So that was 23 years ago. And I submitted my application to an organization called Saudi Industrial Development Fund, SIDF.
SIDF.
This organization is a fund, as it is called. They develop and finance industries in Saudi Arabia. Also in 1983, as an electrical engineer, there was an electrical engineering department in the fund, where in those days we used to finance electrical companies in Saudi Arabia. There used to be the what's so-called consolidated companies: SKICO Central, SKICO Eastern, Western, SKICO South, in addition to northern companies and scattered other smaller companies. In those days also electricity was run by private sector, and still is. But it was totally run by private sector. So
and I think it was from abroad.
Yeah.
They used to rent from outside the kingdom, power, right?
No. It was locally, but they were importing, of course, generators, etc., from outside. So in those days, what we used to do, or what the government have decided to do, is to finance electricity company to build up their generation capacities.
Okay.
And they've done that, and they've done it beautifully. I think most of the era of 70s, late 70s and the 80s, was mostly financed by SIDF until I think 1984, when SIDF gave up the in 1985, I believe, when SIDF gave up the electrical department, and it was converted to the ministry, or diverted to the ministry.
What was your position in the electric utility department?
I was a technical analyst.
Technical analyst, and then you shifted to the project and portfolios department.
No, sorry, I was in the electrical department as a lending office, a lending analyst. Then I switched to the project department as a technical analyst.
What was the project department's main?
Project department, and that sector, this is the shift in my career. Because I was working or doing electrical engineering and electrical business. Then I switched to projects, industrial projects. And that department we used to evaluate industrial projects, small, medium and large projects. So I had to go again into a full training program. I've taken the English course in Atlanta, Georgia, by the way, at the first year. And I had to flew out of...
So your job with the project and portfolios department needed you to learn English?
That's right.
It required you to...
Actually, SIDF, the advantage of SIDF that the work environment is English. So you have to master English to be part of that environment. And everybody was writing, reading, and speaking. Of course, our superior in those days were non-Saudis who are mostly from the West.
So that's why
you
you
don't speak English, so,
yeah.
Arabic. So we had to learn the language and speak English. Most of the reports were in English, so we have to master report writing. Most of the communication was in English, so we had to communicate in English. Really, it was an advantage for me and my colleagues in those days to learn the language and to master it as well, writing and reading.
And when you were the project and portfolios department, you first began as a junior technical analyst.
That's right.
And then
they had to train me, and I went through a very good training course. I had to be trained locally first. So I've been to many factories in Saudi Arabia, between Riyadh, Eastern Province, and Western Province, Yanbu, Jubail, of course Riyadh here, Jeddah, and the training was designed to go through all process, from shop floor training